Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on the playlist Dining with the Departed, where we talk about famous and infamous people who have passed. We discuss their lives, we discuss what they're famous for, and we eat their favorite food. I'm Stacey Lee. Let's begin. Paul William Walker IV was born on September 12, 1973 in Glendale, California, to Cheryl, a clothing model, and Paul William Walker III, a contractor and former amateur boxer. Paul was born and raised Mormon, like I was, but from what I gathered in my research, probably not as Orthodox Mormon as the way I was raised, and he was not active in the religion at all after he was a teenager. He attended Village Christian School and then several community colleges, seeking a degree and a career in marine biology. As a toddler, Paul starred in a television ad for Pampers and then began modeling at only 2 years old. He started working as an actor when he was a teenager and in 1985 had roles on Highway to Heaven, Who's the Boss, Touched by an Angel, and the soap opera The Young and the Restless. Well, that's a trip down TV memory lane, right? Who's the Boss, and Highway to Heaven, and Touched by an Angel. He was on like all the most wholesome shows there were. In 1987, Paul landed a role in the horror comedy film called Monster in the Closet. There were a few other roles in unsuccessful films like Manhattan Gigolo and a film called Program to Kill, but Paul didn't really hit it big with any of those movies. In the 90s, he was in films like Meet the Deedles and Tammy and the T-Rex. Have you seen Tammy and the T-Rex? It's one of those films like Troll that is so infamously bad that it has kind of a cult following. It is probably the worst concept, the most poorly executed, the most poorly acted film I have ever seen, and I'm a B-horror movie fan. This movie is so bad, you absolutely have to seek it out. It is Denise Richards, who love her, but I mean, come on, the acting there. Paul Walker plays her boyfriend, and they're like, she's the cheerleader, and he's the high school stud athlete. I know I'm already laughing, but it's so bad. Anyways, spoiler alert, pause it right now if you don't want to hear what happens. But so he gets killed in the beginning of the movie, and a scientist, I can't even get through this without, takes his brain and implants it into a dinosaur. And then Denise Richards spends the rest of the movie riding him around. It's so, because she's still in love with him, even though it's a dinosaur. I'm sorry. I really didn't think I was going to laugh this hard talking about it. It's just so bad. Anyways, my makeup's running. Oh my gosh. So Paul Walker, thank you for the memories. Look at the joy that you brought to me. Look at the joy that that bad movie has brought to so many people. That in itself is a great legacy, right? Oh, just a second. Anyways, seek out Tammy and the T-Rex if you like bad movies, because there is no movie on earth that's worse than Tammy and the T-Rex. Thank you, Paul Walker, for that alone. It has brought me and so many other people so much joy. Paul Walker was so handsome and so charming and likable, even in this terrible movie, that it really got him noticed. Directors and producers and people in the industry sat up and were like, who is this guy? I mean, yeah, of course, look at him. In 1998, Paul Walker had a daughter that he and his longtime girlfriend, Rebecca Soteros, named Meadow Rain Walker. Now, believe it or not, as famous as Paul Walker became, a lot of people didn't even know he had a child until his untimely death. He had managed to keep her totally and completely out of the public eye. She is now 22 years old and is a model for some really big designer brands. I actually researched and wrote this episode a while back, but just a few days ago, Paul's daughter was married, and Vin Diesel, who we'll talk about in a moment, walked her down the aisle. I love that. I love that he was the kind of guy that people loved so much, and he had great lasting friendships with the people that he worked with, and I'm really happy for her that she had someone to fill the role of her dad on the day of her wedding. By the late 1990s, Paul was in some great movies like Varsity Blues, Pleasantville, and Broke Down Palace. In the early 2000s, he was in one of my guilty pleasure films called The Skulls, and another movie that I'll always love called Joyride with Steven Zahn and Lily Sobieski. I love the film Joyride, and if you haven't seen it, definitely look that one up and watch it. I think they made some sequels, I'm not sure. Obviously, a lot of times the sequels aren't as good as the original, but Joyride is definitely a really fun, scary movie. Not scary in a horror way, just kind of more of like a tense thriller. The same year that Joyride came out, Paul got his big break playing the role that would make him a megastar, Brian O'Connor in the Fast and the Furious franchise. That franchise blew up, and I mean blew up. The first movie was such a popular film that even I saw it. I don't normally venture too far away from my horror movies and my weird documentaries, but even I saw Fast and the Furious. It was a huge hit, and my kids were dying to go see it. So I took my kids back when it came out, and it was a really fun movie. The Fast and the Furious movies have got a great Hollywood-style formula that a lot of people really enjoy. I had to look up how many Fast and the Furious movies there have been because it ain't a couple. It's 13. There are 13 films in the Fast and the Furious film franchise. It is massively popular, and Paul Walker is a big reason for their success. Paul Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, was created by a screenwriter named Gary Scott Thompson. When Rob Cohen was hired to direct the first film, he went right to Paul Walker, approached him directly because he knew that he was perfect for the part. The character Brian O'Connor is an undercover cop tasked with bringing down the street racing leader Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel. But during the course of events, Brian actually becomes friends with Dominic and helps him evade cops. Now, of course, Brian O'Connor is also a great driver, and he ends up challenging Dominic to a race. Like I said, very formulaic action Hollywood stuff, very fun and very successful. Paul Walker, in addition to being, this, really easily played the honorable, nice, clean-cut guy. It fit him really well. Like I like to say, you can take the person out of Mormonism, but you can never fully take the Mormonism out of the person. We always just kind of carry this nice person image. It's just bred into us. I call it the happy hostess syndrome. I could be screaming and yelling at my kids and pick up the phone and be like, hello. Everything's great. There are a lot of stories, way too many to go into here, of Paul being charitable and kind and generous. He once bought a wedding ring for a young veteran to give to his girlfriend after he saw the young man shopping in a jewelry store. Paul pulled the manager aside and paid for the ring to thank the man for his military service. Paul also founded a disaster relief organization after visiting Haiti in 2010 and seeing the terrible conditions in that country. He had a big heart and was a genuinely nice guy. Now, he did also have a relationship with a 16-year-old girl when he was 33 years old. And I try to make these videos tributes, but I can't not mention that because that is cringeworthy. I always try to bring you guys the facts, and even when we're doing a tribute, the facts are still the facts. But the overall thought on Paul is that he was sweet, kind, and loving. The other thing that made Paul so authentic in his role in The Fast and the Furious is that he was, in real life, a car enthusiast, and that's putting it mildly. He loved the whole car culture, and even though he was massively famous, he was known as a really down-to-earth guy that would sit and talk with strangers about cars for hours. He loved them. Paul and Vin Diesel became great friends in real life and remained close throughout, with Vin Diesel even becoming Meadows' godfather. Paul was very charming, and he himself admits that early in his life, he used his great looks and his charm to get people he liked out of trouble, and he admits he was an expert at getting his way. Paul got into some pretty serious trouble when he was 18 years old. The crime has never been disclosed, but he is quoted as saying, "I didn't hurt anybody, but I did some stupid things when I was younger. I think we all did. I was always the guy that would find a way around this, or I would find a way around that, and usually when I smiled or winked, I would get out of trouble, which enabled too much. I was just that guy." So he knew, and at least he admits it. I mean, it's a really good quality to be self-effacing and honest about your lesser qualities. Is being so handsome that you can get away with anything, is that a good or a bad thing? Paul was a very private person. I mean, obviously, he had a daughter that not a lot of people even knew about. So he's not one of those movie stars that we know every little detail about. He really enjoyed and prized his private life. He was so private that many fans do not know he was in a very serious motorcycle accident in 2008 and almost died. He was going about 50 miles an hour on his bike on his way home from the gym when he ran into the back of a car that had stopped. The driver was talking on their cell phone and wasn't paying attention. Paul suffered some very serious injuries in the crash, but he did fully recover. From around 2005 to 2013, Paul Walker was in films like 8 Below, Running Scared, Flags of Our Fathers, The Death and Life of Bobby Z, and Takers. He also appeared in some music videos for Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Ja Rule, Ludacris, 2 Chainz, and Wiz Khalifa. Whatever Paul was doing, whatever he was working on, he was always spending time driving fast cars, talking about cars, and researching ways to modify cars he had purchased. He just loved cars. On November 30th, 2013, while on a Thanksgiving break from filming one of the Fast and the Furious movies, Paul, who was 40 years old at the time, and his friend Roger Rodas, age 38, left a charity event for Paul's charity called Reach Out Worldwide, which helped victims of Typhoon Haiyan. They got into Roger's 2005 Porsche Carrera GT with Roger driving. They were driving through a neighborhood in Santa Clarita, California, which had a 45-mile-an-hour limit, but they were doing between 80 and 93 miles an hour. This particular road, called Hercules Street in Valencia, is popular for drifting cars, and there is a somewhat sharp curve on the road. As Roger flew down the road, doing almost double the speed limit, the car crashed into a concrete lamppost and 2 trees. It burst into flames on impact. Both the driver, Roger Rodas, and Paul Walker were killed almost instantly. There was no way that any human being could have survived this particular crash. At autopsy, there was a bit of soot present in Paul Walker's trachea, so he may have taken a breath or two after impact, but the accident was so horrific, it was, like I said, unsurvivable. Neither Roger nor Paul had drugs or alcohol in their system at the time of the crash, and both of the men were wearing seatbelts. The airbags deployed, as they are designed to do, as soon as the car clipped a light pole and then the tree. Roger had simply lost control of the car that was going much, much too fast for that street, and he crashed. Both men were burnt beyond recognition. Paul Walker suffered fractures of his left jawbone, collarbone, pelvis, ribs, and spine. He died very quickly of severe, blunt head, neck, and chest trauma. The world was shocked to hear of the young, popular actor's tragic death. His friends and fellow actors wrote tributes on social media saying things like, "For selfish reasons, we all wanted you to stay. Another laugh, another take, another talk, another moment." On December 13th, 2013, Paul Walker was cremated and his ashes were buried in a non-denominational service at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Several people who spoke recalled what Paul once told them. He said, "If one day the speed kills me, do not cry because I was smiling." He died doing what he loved. After his death, several documentaries were made and several lawsuits were filed. One by his father to reclaim some of the cars that Roger and Paul had owned together, and one on behalf of his daughter, which alleged the Porsche Carrera GT was to blame for the accident. The lawsuit was not successful, and I can see why. Rodas was driving dangerously and frankly could have hurt a lot more people. We really need to keep that in mind. Paul Walker will always be remembered as the golden boy with stunning good looks and a twinkle in his eye. He was a son, a father, and a friend, and he is gone much, much too soon. I think he left a really great legacy. He left us with some really great film. He brought a lot of enjoyment to a lot of people with his craft. He was also, really a philanthropist. He did a lot of good with his charity work. He actually cared. He seems like one of those people that actually really cared about others, and it's nice to see. Now, as we always do here on this playlist, we talk about the departed's favorite food. It was really easy to find out that Paul Walker loved lasagna. He also really loved Mexican food, but everything that I found said that his favorite food was really lasagna. So not only was he a great person, but he had great taste in food, because who doesn't love lasagna? So right now, we're gonna taste his favorite food as we remember Paul Walker. Who doesn't love a great piece of lasagna? I don't know many people. It's one of my favorite foods as well. Whenever I have a friend that I'm taking a meal to, or when my daughter has a baby, or if someone's not feeling well, I say, what would you like me to bring you? Bring me your lasagna. And I think I'm good at making it because I enjoy it so much and because I love it so much. Don't you feel like you're better at the things that you really, really enjoy? Yeah, that's how I am with lasagna. This is from one of my local restaurants. I'm really trying to support our local restaurants right now. It's been a tough couple of years for them. So I went and got this at one of our Italian places. There is just something so comforting about lasagna. It's just one of those dishes, even if you never had it homemade for you, you still love it, right? It's just great. Something about the way that it's baked in the oven just makes it one of those great comfort foods. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Dining with the Departed. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you would like to support me, please subscribe. It helps me so much. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.